We'll begin our day. It's actually not the maroon and white notebook on a Wednesday. Call it the college football notebook. Yeah, there's maroon and white in there, but things that have caught my attention. I talk about ESPN recruiting being the most elite, snobbish when they hand out 5 stars. I wanted to see how snobbish. For this upcoming recruiting cycle, currently, they only have 23 total 5 stars. Now, there'll be re-rankings. Maybe they'll hand out more. I don't think it'll shrink. But they only have 23. The Aggies, who have the number 1 recruiting class for the cycle, currently have 6 committed. And I love that kind of perspective. It's the most of anyone in the cycle. If they were to hold on, maybe even add more, it would be the all-time record for ESPN recruiting. The old record is 5. Alabama did it. And that Jimbo class was 5 also. 6, Elko 27, would be the new record for most 5 stars in a class for ESPN recruiting. But there's only 23 total. And one school is going to have 6. That's almost a quarter of all the 5 stars. That's the kind of perspective I like to look into it. Now, I mentioned the school right behind them, closest might be a better phrasing, is Ohio State with 4. 2 schools combined, 10 out of the 23. Shows you how dominating the 2 are together on the 5-star front. But yeah, I wanted to look that up for my own, just interested in. 23 total 5 stars. A&M currently has 6 in those ESPN recruiting rankings. College football notebook. Took a look at the Heisman odds to start the upcoming year. And one of the things, the Heisman favorite almost rarely ever wins. The opening Heisman favorite. Now, it's not some 100 to 1 shot either. Looking at the second tier is not a bad idea. Here were the preseason odds for recent winners. Fernando Mendoza was 60 to 1 last year. Travis Hunter was 35 to 1 in 2024. Jaden Daniels, top 5 preseason, but was 10 to 1. Caleb Williams, when he won in 2022 for USC, was 8 to 1. Bryce Young at Bama was 10 to 1. Notice none of those were the prohibitive favorite, but they weren't long shots. Now, if you go back to 2020, Devontae Smith, Bama was 60 to 1. When Joe Burrow won it in 2019, he was 40 to 1. Skyler Murray, Chip Howard's most favorite quarterback of all time, was 20 to 1. And I'm just going back here. These are recent times, past decade. Lamar Jackson, when he won at Louisville in 2016, was 50 to 1. So again, it's rare when the opening bell favorite actually wins the Heisman. Sorry, Arch, you're going to disappoint yet again. That was what I took away from that. I'm not sure what you took away from that. By the way, mentioning Chip Howard, he will not be with us Wednesdays in July. Normally 11:20, joins me in the Charles Schwab studio. We catch up and hang out. But Chip is he's on one heck of a vacation. I mean, if he's not going to be on Chip Howard Sports Talk, he's not going to be on the Louie Bonilla Show. We will miss Chip. A moment of silence for Chip. Thank you. He'll be back with us in August. College football notebook. The Athletic, and you've heard me reference this, is doing their 90s college football and college basketball nostalgia. And I mean everything and anything. And I've shared some of it, not all of it. And it is epic. Like, it is so crazy cool. 2 things I got to share with you. One, they had this article, and it's the origin of college football's most unhinged corner of the internet. What do you think that is? Before I share it, just give yourself 10 seconds. The origin of college football's most unhinged corner of the internet. Could have been fraternities. It's not. A lot of things it could have been, but you know what it was? Message boards. It is an origin story. Well, it's in the title of the headline, and it's so good. I didn't even know that message boards originated in the 90s. I never thought about when it originated. But did you know, the very first message board, summer of 96, June 6th of 1996, Alliance Sports. It was called Rubicon. Alliance Sports. It was called Rubicon, and it was launched on June 6th of 1996. And guess what? It was later renamed, because I think people into the recruiting universe and message board universe will recognize this name. But it's original. Rubicon Alliance Sports, June 6, 1996. And it later became renamed Rivals. Still around till today. And the point of the message board was supposed to be sharing, it's not what current message boards have turned into. And the early message boards were kind of a nightmare because of, how information was shared. And I'm talking about the back end. It is a great, epic story. It is a fun look back. They talk about the host of the website that featured message boards, a computer service. They equated the way they said it was servers were like stadiums hosting games. They mentioned old search engines like Web Crawler or the internet service providers. I remember Prodigy. And, quote, due to volume and the primitive nature of the providers at the times, sites would easily crash because fans around the world would be trying to catch up on the latest gossip on the boards. They have a quote. From the guy that ran the first message boards. Quote, it was a fist fight at all times. Great stuff. The Athletic and the title, The Origin Story of College Football's Most Unhinged Corner of the Internet, message boards. And they even throw a shout out. They mention the old 900 numbers that people used to call to get recruiting inside information. They throw a shout out to the first, I think it was the first, but one of the first fan websites, FSUKnowles.com. The guy had to change the name to warchant.com. Oh, this whole nostalgia throwback thing they've been doing. And it's little things like that I think people don't understand how much happened in college football in the 90s. Now, I said there were two things I wanted to throw back to. Well, the Athletic did, and I wanted to share. They've done something every day. I've been bringing it all here, but this one, near and dear to a lot of hearts, I believe. A lot of hearts, I believe. Title, The Southwest Conference Left a Legacy and Foreshadowed the Future of College Football. I reference the SWC from time to time. When I started off a college football fan in the 80s, the SWC, and when they say foreshadowed, they're talking about money before there was NIL. They're talking about a lot of different elements today the SWC was doing illegally. Does anyone even remember who were the 8 teams that were in the Southwest Conference? Because the reason a lot of these teams are doing really well today, some not so much. But the Southwest Conference used to be Arkansas, Baylor, Houston Rice, SMU, Texas Tech, A&M, TCU, and Texas Tech. Started splintering early 90s, broke up 96. They talked to DeLoss Dodds, the retired former TUAD, and he hit it. What made it different, and I'll call it fun, is that in any city, in the state of Texas, you'd go to work, and when you do lunch, of those 8 schools, 4 to 6 of them would kind of be represented at your lunch table, and you'd be smack talking. You didn't need a message board. Your lunch table, your work office was a message board because every school was in the state of Texas. And that was every day, every event, everywhere. A factoid that they shared, I got to find this. There was a number. But former Southwest Conference schools, they had an incredible year last year. They've been doing well. Like Texas, 3rd consecutive double-digit season. Played in the CFP 24-25. A&M made their first college football playoff appearance last year. Texas Tech, first CFP last season. TCU played for the national title in 2022. SMU made the first college football playoff in their first year in the ACC. Houston went 10-3 in just their second year last year. Things like that. The 6 schools that I mentioned went 61-18 last year, all former SWC schools. Now, that was a long time ago, and I've been always clear because some people get a little too far. I am not sitting here and calling for the return of the Southwest Conference ever, 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 ever. But it was a good time. And it was cheating. It was outlaw. It made the SEC look clean at times. SMU got the only death penalty. Why did the Southwest Conference die if it was so cool, Lou? In 84? When the NCAA versus the Board of Regents of OU went through, which gave all the TV rights back to the conferences, that was the death knell. Because I just said what made it awesome was that every school was in the state of Texas. Guess what? Death knell. TV rights were worthless. They only had one state represented. And we've learned every TV negotiation since, every super conference realignment since, market influence, TV market influence, TV market power. Southwest Conference had every school in one. Now, if they would have been like one of the first conferences to start expanding by TV markets, but no, having all in one, that was the death of the Southwest Conference, was when the TV rights went back to the conferences, actually, because you were just locked into the state. But great article. If you're a Southwest Conference fan, a nice trip back to the fun that was. This is the Louie Bonilla Show. Yeah, College Football Notebook, having fun. One other thing from the College Football Notebook. Today is July 1st. Conference realignment happened today. No super involved. Like the Pac-12 went from 2 to 8, and we went from G5 to G6 because of that. Pac-12 is now a group of. Oregon State, Washington State spent the past 2 years as a 2-team conference. They added Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, Texas State, Utah State. All 8 teams in the Pac-12 have the word state in the title, with Oregon State and Washington State. The Mountain West, they lost all the state schools, 5 to the Pac-12. And they added UTEP, North Dakota State, Northern Illinois. I have this fond spot in my heart for the Pac-12 and Mountain West. Before we had TV, 7 games per slot all day long. And when we first started having TV, college football, I need to be specific, that Mountain West Pac-12 After Dark was real. ESPN did not own a lot of TV rights at all. And they got like Mountain West and WAC late night, that TV slot. And being a college football junkie, I could not wait. Like, it was a treat. It was Mountain West and some WAC, because ESPN could pay nickels and air that 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. And it turned into Pac-12 After Dark once, they got bigger rights. So I always, with a smile, You say Mountain West, or WAC even. WAC no more, but a smile on my face looking at this. But yeah, conference realignment happened today, just not with the word super. Conference USA, they lost Louisiana Tech and UTEP and added no one. 5th straight year they've lost a member. The Sun Belt lost Texas State to the Pac-12, added Louisiana Tech. And the MAC, Northern Illinois. We'll fondly remember them. And they added Sacramento State, first year in D1 for them. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We're going to head to the Diamond, Astros, Rangers, and more. It's the Louie Bonilla Show, just getting started. Presented by CC Electric, Wednesday on The Zone.
Listen to the Houston Astros on The Zone, thanks to Kelly Berdozer.
I want to go to the Diamond. I mean, it's Listener Appreciation Night. We're going to the Diamond anyway. But did you know it's Bobby Bonilla Day? And it's been Bobby Bonilla Day for a long time. Maybe you don't even know what Bobby Bonilla Day is. The New York Mets decided to defer this $5 million payment to Bobby Bonilla, legend back in the day. And it came with this 8% interest that accrued on it. It ended up being one of the greatest deals, one of the greatest contracts in the history of Major League Baseball. On July 1st, and this is the 16th installment of the deferred payment, Bobby Bonilla today got a check from the New York Mets for $1,193,248.20. He's already made $19 million in change. He still owed $10,739,000 over the next 9 years through 2035. It is insane, to be fair with you, how this has went. In 2000, the Mets agreed to buy out the remaining about $6 million on the deal. And instead of just giving them a check for, $6 million, the Mets agreed to make annual payments of 1.2 for 25 years, starting in 2011, with a 8% interest. So they owed him $6 million, and they're going to pay him over the course of this about $29 million. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. What a crummy deal. Not for Bobby Bonilla. On the Diamond last night, Astros beat the Twins, 6-4 final, and the Astros scored all 6 runs. They scored all 6 runs in the bottom of the 4th inning. Needed one big inning to score them all. Mike Burrows got the start. He wasn't particularly good. 5 innings, 4 runs, had a 3-run first for the Twins. So I guess you could say he settled down from there. He got the dub. Josh Hader is a bad, bad man. Josh Hader's been nothing short of brilliant. His 8th save. And I believe is he 7 for 7? No, 8 for 8 since he's come back. Sub-1 ERA. He's only given up 1 run since he's came back, has not cost the Astros. And again, the offense, 6 runs, all in the 4th. They win 6-4. The capper in the inning, Yordan Alvarez, grand slam, drive home safely. Now, speaking of Yordan Alvarez, CBS Sports did all these mid-season award kind of things. And Yordan Alvarez was their American League MVP and also their American League Comeback Player of the Year. Yordan Alvarez is having that kind of year. And he was in a slump before the Grand Slam. Heavy slump. Yet he still leads in like 3 different offensive categories. And he's still the AL MVP at this point. That's how huge his numbers are. That's how huge his numbers are. So the Astros win, but they can't make up any ground because the Texas Rangers are so insane on fire right now. They won their 6th straight. They beat the Guardians. That was a weird game. They end up winning 4-2. They end up winning 4-2. the go-ahead run in the 7th that put them up 3-2, fly ball in the outfield. It's caught by Cooper Ingle, who then takes the ball, tosses it into the crowd. It was only the second out. I hadn't seen that in a long time. He thought it was the third out. Because of his decision to toss the ball into the crowd, Ezekiel Duran is allowed to score from second. Rangers take a 3-2 lead. Now, Cooper Ingle, only his 4th big league game. And the Rangers scored another run, so that wasn't the game-winning run. They didn't pull him from the game. This is a lesson for the kid. But one of those moments where the go-ahead run was because the, 4th-start outfielder for the Guardians thought it was out number 2. But oh no, it definitely was not. That's rough. Jock Peterson, yard, home run, his 14th. Josh Young, 2 for 4, homer, RBI. That's your 3 RBIs plus the Doe play of the year so far. Jacob deGrom, 7-2. He was brilliant. Jacob Latz, yet another save, his 18th of the year. Rangers have won 6 straight, 8-2 in their last 10. And they're 2 games above 500, which has to be a record right now in the American League West. Has any team in the AL West been 2 games above 500 or more the entire year? I would take no if we're betting. Astros are only 2 games below 500. If they hit 500, I'm probably going to cry. That would be a beautiful They were 11 games below at one point. Astros 7-3 in their last 10. Now, the Astros play the Twins tonight, 6:40. You can hear the game on Willie 1550 AM, thanks to Kelly Burt Dozer. Tonight on the Zone, we got the Bombers against the Lake Charles Gator Gumbo Gators. And that's that pop-up game in Caldwell. And if you're interested in going to that game, it's free admission. The barnstorming pop-up game in Caldwell is free admission. So, Bombers, Zone, 6:45. Astros, 6:40 on Willie 1550 AM. Thanks to Kelly Burt Dozer. That's Baseball and Brian broadcasting tonight. I'll share it tomorrow. Major League Baseball has released their list of July 4th weekend giveaways at the ballparks. Oh, it's awesome. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. This is the Louie Bonilla Show. I'll be right back. Presented by CC Electric. Built on faith, family, and community. CC Electric.
The Louie Bonilla Show. Presented by CC Electric. Don't ask unless you want the truth. Because
you can't handle the truth.
Weekdays, 11 to 2 on the Zone.
Time now. It's part 2 of a listen-in. And it's Greg McElroy. And he did What If for College Football 2026. It is fun.
What If's number 6. What if the Big 12 sends 2 teams to the college football playoff? That's right. That's right. The Big 12, 2 teams to the CFB. Let me set the table. Like right now, we know that the Big 12 has a clear king and a bit of a wide open court because Texas Tech is the reigning champion. It's their first outright conference title since 1955. And the Brendan Sorsby saga, it only underlined just how loaded they are. Because once he was cleared to play, even with the gambling case and all this other stuff and the backlash, it was nuclear. There were boycotts, like all this other stuff. The Big 12 lawsuit, half the sport in revolt. Rather than keeping it going past the supplemental draft deadline, Sorsby walked away and is now going to the NFL draft, right? But here's the tell. Even without their number 1 quarterback, even without their top transfer portal addition, every projection still has the Red Raiders as a top 10 team and the favorite to win the league. That's what happens when a billionaire booster has tremendous and pours resources into the program, and the rest of the depth chart is also loaded. So Texas Tech winning the league and grabbing the automatic bid, that's the easier part right now to be able to anticipate, right? But the two bid question is the hardest part, because for the Big 12 to get a second team in, somebody has to build a playoff caliber resume as an at-large. And the obvious candidate in this scenario would be BYU. With Bear Bachmeier back, the Cougars went 12-2 last year. Those two losses coming to Texas Tech, and they are the most complete non-Texas Tech roster in the league. But here's the trap that's built into the league, because the Big 12's personality has been parity. Everyone beats everybody, and every game seems to be a one-score game, and that chaos is super fun in October. But, come around December, it's a little bit of a fatal flaw, because an at-large bid is a bit of a beauty contest, and a 10-2 Big 12 team with two ugly conference losses does not photograph real well as a two-loss SEC or a two-loss Big 10 team. So what would a two-bid Big 12 actually mean? It would mean the league finally cleared the perception hurdle that's haunted it since this recent realignment. The sense that it has one elite team and then a bunch of coin flips. Because if Tech does go and win the league and BYU crashes the field as an at-large, the Big 12 stops being a one-bid afterthought and becomes a real player in the national money conversation. If it stays a one-bid league, then the gap between the Power 2 and everybody else continues to widen as the years progress. What if number 7? What if Bill Belichick and North Carolina actually figure it out in year number 2? Because right now, nobody's betting on it. The greatest coach in the history of professional football went 4-8 in his first season. 4-8. They finished 13th in the ACC, dead last in the country in total offense. And the market noticed, right? I mean, Belichick fell 38 spots in one of the national coach rankings, the biggest drop in the sport. And Vegas has set the Tar Heels win total at just 4.5. So the what if here is not what if they win the league. The what if is what if the greatest defensive mind ever can actually coach college football? And that's a real question. Here's why it's not that crazy. Because they brought in Bobby Petrino to run the offense, a man who has done amazing things offensively in college football for the better part of the last 20-plus years. Right? The guy won a Heisman Trophy with Lamar Jackson, has had a really good run of offense. He also has a veteran quarterback room led by the addition of Billy Edwards. And if you look at North Carolina last year, the offense was the issue. It wasn't the defense. They failed to score 20 points 7 times. They lost all 7 of those games. So a defensive genius with a real offensive coordinator that is specialized at putting offense together at this level, and an actual quarterback is, at a minimum, a very different football team. But the schedule is a bit of a gauntlet. I mean, you start with TCU in Dublin, you get Clemson on the road, you get Notre Dame, and 11 of 12 opponents are coming off a season in which they were a winning team. So what does figuring it out mean? It would mean this 74-year-old who spent 3 decades in the NFL just proved that principles travel and that you can win in the portal era the same way you won at the highest level in the salary cap era. And it would kind of quiet the loudest question in the sport, whether NFL greatness means anything on a college campus. I think a bowl game would do it. I mean, 7 wins would make him a genius again. Anything less, and people are going to start looking at the buyout numbers and whether or not this is actually going to go where the Tar Heels ultimately wanted it to go. So big year in Chapel Hill for Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels. What if number 8? What if 3 quarterbacks who lost last season to injury come back and torch everybody? Now, you're probably wondering which 3? Well, this is the redemption arc, and it runs through 3 different programs. We'll start with Sam Leavitt at LSU because he was the number 1 player in the transfer portal, depending on the service that you look at. And Lane Kiffin decided to build his first LSU roster around him. But Leavitt's 2025 ended with a Liz Frank injury at Arizona State. And that's the kind of injury that attacks the thing that kind of makes him special, which is, I mean, foot injuries are just challenging. And the ability to escape and create and buy time and do things off schedule, that's significant. Now, he's fully cleared, or at least expected to be fully cleared by the time training camp rolls around. And if he is the player who threw for nearly 2,900 yards and 5 scores a couple years ago, then Kiffin's offense has a different ceiling entirely. Then there's Austin Simmons, who opened last year as Ole Miss's starting quarterback. He hurts his ankle in week 2 against Kentucky, and then watches Trinidad Chambliss take over the job and never give it back. He's now transferred to Missouri, where he is now expected to be the guy. So this is not a bounce back. It is a fresh start with a chip on the shoulder. And then there's Steve Angeli. And Angeli went down with a torn Achilles at Syracuse last September, and he was second in the country in passing yards when he went down. Second. The Orange lost their last 8 games without him. Now, here's the honest part. And Achilles is not an ankle. He was still walking with a limp at some of the spring days that he was out there. And Syracuse is bringing in some portal arms just in case. So the question on Angeli is not talent. It's whether the explosion comes all the way back. And if all 3 deliver, here's what it means. It means the most volatile position in the sport just got 3 proven starters handed back to get teams that want to be contenders that they spent last fall playing without them. And that's 3 teams whose basically their season kind of lies on these 3 guys. So the schedule makers have no idea what's coming. So we'll find out what happens. But man, these 3 guys being back playing at a high level would be massive for those 3 teams. What if number 9? What if Florida State, Clemson, and Nebraska are all underwhelming again, and the Giants just stay on the floor? Now, these are no question 3 of the most recognizable brands in the sport. Between them, you got a bunch of national championships, you got decades of sellouts, and millions upon millions of fans who show up on the name alone. And right now, all 3 are kind of stuck, right? They haven't been able to transcend, or at least they haven't transcended in quite a while. We'll start with Clemson. Look, Clemson went 7-6 last year. It's their worst record in 15 years. And now they've lost at least 4 games in 4 consecutive seasons. That's not a blip. That is a bit of a trend, right? And Dabo Swinney is feeling the heat a little bit for the first time. Not that he's in jeopardy of losing his job. No way. He's not in jeopardy of that, but feeling the heat of maybe making some adjustments within the program. And here he is handing the keys to a first-time starter in Christopher Vezina, now that Cade Klubnik is now in the NFL. And we know the talent is there. And Clemson does not have a roster problem. They have a really solid roster. I really like their defensive line. I really like their weapons at wide receiver. They have talent. But does talent turn into wins? Does Clemson have a talent to wins problem? Well, that's a real question. Because the talent was there last year. It did not amount to a lot of wins. Well, can it this year? Then there's Florida State. And this one's pretty spectacular, right? Because the Seminoles won the ACC in 2023, got snubbed from the playoffs, and have spent 2 years lighting a lot of goodwill on fire, right? They go 2-10 in 2024, 5-7 last year, 17 losses in 24 months for a program that was conference champion just 2 seasons ago is a hard thing to wrap your head around. And no one's denying that Mike Norvell, I mean, he's on a hot seat. There's no denying that. He's taking back play calling himself. He stood up this spring and told everybody that he expects 2026 to be the best year ever, which is great. Is either a man that maybe found something this offseason and maybe they're going to take a big step, or a man that is in a tough spot, right? Certainly hoping the best for Florida State, but what if they just can't seem to get things going? And then there's Nebraska. Look, Nebraska finally snapped a bowl drought, which is great, but it wasn't great in the bowl game. Then their quarterback leaves, transfers to Oregon, and Matt Rule's 19-19 in 3 years at Lincoln, right? And that's a statistical definition of a program that's kind of stuck. Well, now we're banking on Anthony Calandria, who torched the Mountain West, to take a big step and start torching Ohio State and Indiana and Oregon. And everyone knows, so just watch the tape for a little bit. You'll see that Calandria can sling it, man. He can run it too. I mean, this guy can play football at a really high level. But there is a question about whether Mountain West swagger can survive the gauntlet that is the Big Ten. So what does it mean if all 3 of these programs stay down? It means the era of the traditional blue blood, you can make a case that it's over. It means that a trophy case and a famous fight song, it just doesn't buy wins the same way it once did. Not against programs that are spending smarter in the portal and have captured the NIL market. So if Clemson and Florida State and Nebraska all disappoint again, the lesson is brutal and simple. In this sport, history is not a strategy. The names still sell tickets, but they don't necessarily win you the games that they once did. What if number 10? What if the college football playoff selection is more confusing, more contested, and more chaotic than ever? And what if the field is about to blow wide open? Now, this one's funny because I feel like it's always been super confusing. It's always been super contested, and it's always been super chaotic. So to think that it could be more confusing, contested, and chaotic than ever, whew, I got to prepare myself for those Tuesday night ranking shows because it will be tough for sure. Let's separate a couple storms first, right? Storm one is the season. The 12-team field, we know it's locked in for 2026. We know the seeding tweaked last year successfully. We know the seeding is, again, tweaked just a little bit. Straight seeding now, top 4 teams getting a bye. Those byes don't go to a conference champion. That changed last year. Now all the 4 conference champions, they're in automatically because the tiebreaker scenarios in the conference championships are cleaner. All that's fine. So it sounds cleaner, right? It's not. Because every team on the bubble now has a different problem, a different math problem. And we don't know exactly what the criteria will be this year. It depends on the teams that are being considered. Last year, for example, it was all about head-to-head. It was all head-to-head. It was Notre Dame against Miami. Miami won the head-to-head. They were in over Notre Dame. That's really what it came down to. But you don't know what criteria will be used this year because we don't know what the data points are going to look like when it comes to the teams. So everyone's like, well, it changes every year. Well, it changes every year because the teams involved and their resumes are different than the year before. But it's going to be tough, right? No matter what, everyone believes their team should be in. Everyone believes beyond a doubt that they're getting a raw deal if they're left out. When in reality, if they would have just won their games, they'd have been in. But still, we're focused on more chaotic, more crazy, more difficult to digest. All right, so that's storm one. Here's storm two. Storm two is the future, and it's bigger because we know right now the SEC and the Big Ten, they're at war over what comes next. We know the SEC wants 16. We know the Big Ten wants 24. We know that both sides have to agree, and the deadline to change the playoff format would be December 1st of this year. Well, the part that no one's really talking about right now is that the bracket that you watch this winter could be the last small bracket. I mean, a 24-team model would gut conference championship weekend. That would adjust things, right? It would look different. It'd push the season into January. It'd put first-round games right up against NFL's Saturday windows. So what does maximum chaos look like? Well, it means the regular season that we're all about to watch is being played under rules that the people in charge are actively adjusting, right? Expansion is not a question of if. It's a question of how big and how soon. And whether the thing makes this whole sport the best regular season in America, whether it survives its current expansion push, well, we'll see. Because if the field now doubles, well, every Saturday from September through December matters just a little bit less. And that is a trade that I'm not excited about as a fan of the sport, but a trade that we need to make with eyes wide open.
That was part 2 of our Listen In. Greg McElroy, what if for the college football season 2026? It's the Louie Bonilla Show, presented by CC Electric Residential and Commercial Industrial Services. When we come back, we got to wrap up our first hour together on a Wednesday here on The Zone.
Sign up for the Zone newsletter and always be in the know about that day's guest lineup, where and when your favorite team plays, and more. Sign up at zone1150.com.
The Louie Bonilla Show, we're kind of done with our first hour together, and I wanted to wrap up in the lifestyles portion of the Louie Bonilla Show. Today is July 1st, but you know that. Some of the things to look forward to in the month of July. We know July 4th is this weekend. America celebrating 250 years since the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. So July 4th weekend, way worth something to look forward to. I don't know if you've paid attention. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over things in town because, man, there's an epic amount of cool this weekend. The World Cup runs through the 19th. USA plays tonight at 7. USA. The Tour de France starts this weekend. The MLB All-Star Game is July 14th. And one of the majors for golf, the Open Championship, starts the 16th. Brutal, brutal. It is. Did you know that National Fried Chicken Day is July 6th? World Chocolate Day is July 7th. National French Fry Day is July 10th. National Mojito Day is July 11th. And Ice Cream Day is July 19th. I got to talk. Tony Catalina is going to be with us in about 4 minutes. And I got to hook him up on this National Ice Cream Day. You know, he does the Blue Bell ice cream reviews every Wednesday. So you know he's got to celebrate. I looked at the movie releases. Not a single one of these makes me go, I got to go to the movie theater. The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan, I have rolled with forever. Just nothing I've seen about this movie makes me say I got to go. Hits movie theaters July 17th. And Spider-Man Brand New Day is on July 31st. I'll probably let my friends talk me into it, but I'm not sprinting to go see it at the movie theater, that's for sure. Those are things to look forward to. Mark your calendar in the month of July. I'll be right back, like I mentioned, with Tony, with ice cream, and a lot of Aggie sports. It's the Louie Bonilla Show on the Zone.